Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, March 5th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 178 days, the game against Michigan in 269 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. The vibes are immaculate today. Our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com joins us, and we're going to be talking linebackers today. We're continuing our spring preview series. I'm going to double check where we left off on this because it has been a minute. Tony was at the NFL Combine all last week, so we got kind of out of our normal show rhythm. We're back now. One of the guys that you got to talk to, Tony, who is gone from that linebacker room, Cody Simon, he feels like he's going to leave a pretty significant hole in that linebacker unit that they're going to have to fill. Sonny Styles, though, he's coming back, and boy, the conversation around Sonny Styles last week at the NFL Combine and elsewhere, boy, I think there's some big expectations for Sonny Styles this season.
Yeah, and asked just about everybody on the defensive side of the ball their thoughts on what Sonny Styles can do this year, which is just his second year as a full-time linebacker. And you had I think Jack Sawyer said top 10 pick type of ability. Somebody else mentioned an all-American season. And the interesting thing is most of those guys also mentioned how he got better as the season went on. So it's like they acknowledged some early struggles, but by the end of the year, when he had 3 tackles for loss against Texas or whatever, and a couple of sacks, and by the end of the year, he's playing very, very well. And yeah, that's not a surprise that the more he plays, the better he gets. And as I've said before, like don't forget, he started the season opener at middle linebacker because Cody Simon was out. So that was his first start as a linebacker, as middle linebacker after practicing all spring and fall camp as the will. So like everybody will tell you how smart he is. We always talk about how athletic he is, but his teammates are just the intelligence and his ability to do whatever is needed is elite.
Yeah, and he could be an elite player this year. The athleticism has been there since high school. We were talking about him as a freak athlete in 2020 maybe. I mean, it has been a long time. He reclassified, came to Ohio State early, and this is his somehow 4th year. I don't know. This is one of those where I double check and I'm like, that can't be right. But yes, it is right. 4th year at Ohio State for Sonny Styles. So some of the other veterans on that linebacker unit from last year, a lot of guys in different places. Gabe Powers is literally in a different place. He transferred out. CJ Hicks, he could play in a couple different spots. We were including him with the linebacker show here because he's listed as a linebacker on the roster, but he could end up in a bunch of different spots. And then Arvell Reese, boy, Arvell Reese feels like the vibes around him are real strong, next man up kind of vibes to me going into the spring.
Yeah, and he's following in Cody Simon's footsteps. Cody Simon played as that third linebacker the previous 2 years in 2022 and 2023, then stepped in as a starter. Arvell Reese started the 2024 season as the number 3 middle linebacker behind Simon and Gabe Powers. And again, this is also his first full season as a linebacker because he came to Ohio State as a linebacker who could move to defensive end. He almost immediately moved to defensive end in camp because of need, got injured, and never saw any time on defense in games. So last year being his first full year as a linebacker, he ascended. And before long, he was the backup middle linebacker, and he was the third linebacker. And when they needed to play 3 linebacker sets, he was in there. And I think he started a game down the stretch later in the season as well. And talking to Cody Simon about him at the Combine, he said he's never seen anybody that can close on the ball carrier like him. And this is a guy who's 6'4" and 240 pounds, and he can run from sideline to sideline. And he showed that last year. Now he just needs to show that he can be the middle linebacker and be consistent and do everything that position requires. The physical aspect of it is fine, and he'll do all of that. But just being the guy, the quarterback of the defense, if you will, that's the next step for him. But everybody has confidence that he's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's strange to feel like kind of exactly what he's going to be so early in his career and with such limited exposure on the field. But he feels like you kind of know what you got there. CJ Hicks is kind of the other end of that spectrum where he's been around longer than Arvell Reese has. I don't know what to expect from CJ Hicks this year. I don't know where to expect CJ Hicks to be. I think my guess would be maybe coming off the edge, but with the addition of Matt Patricia as the new defensive coordinator, it feels like that adds some uncertainty there. I feel like we're going to see a lot of CJ Hicks this spring, but beyond that, I don't have a real strong opinion on what it's going to look like. Like I'm really intrigued by CJ Hicks this spring. I just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, and at the combine, when Denzel Burke was asked for some guys who are going to step up this year that maybe people aren't talking about, one of the names was CJ Hicks. He said, I feel like CJ Hicks, he's going to be on the rise. I feel like this is his year. And so then my follow-up, a question or two later, was like, where? Like, Denzel, where? And his answer was, let's see, it was, I don't know, because we've got a new DC now. So we'll have a chance to see how that plays out. Looking forward to see him play this year. So like my response is, where is he going to play? And Denzel's like, I honestly don't know. Like with Jim Knowles, it's probably on the edge. Now with Matt Patricia, I'm going to assume it's the same thing because they do some they at New England, they would specialize guys like you can do this really well. So this is what you're going to do. And I think what they're going to find with CJ Hicks is what everybody's known like basically forever. He can get to the passer, but you need to be a more well-rounded player and all of the whole scope of football. But this being his senior year, it's like, well, if you can do this thing, can you be the Mitchell Melton for the 2025 defense? Because I think he can. And that's where I'm kind of expecting him to be because the linebacker situation, it just hasn't worked out as they would hope. So if he wants to be on the edge, you need some pass rushing help, and let's see what he can do.
It's funny you were talking, and I in my head I'm going, I'm going to bring up Mitchell Melton because it feels like that might be the spot and then there you go. So I think we are on the same page there. Maybe a more athletic version of Mitchell Melton, or a little faster than Mitchell Melton. I mean, Mitchell Melton carved out a really nice role for himself. He has departed. He is with the Virginia Cavaliers now, so that spot is available on the edge. So we'll see if that is where CJ Hicks ends up. A couple guys who had solid true freshman seasons, didn't get to play a whole heck of a lot. Payton Pierce, who played a bunch on special teams, Garrett Stover as well. A couple second-year players who could be in line for potentially bigger roles this year. But, I mean, there are three real talented freshmen coming up behind them. So, we did a Buckeye Weekly show talking about some of the guys who are kind of in that middle spot where it's like, yeah, they could potentially catch guys ahead of them. They could potentially get caught by the guys behind them. It's going to be a really interesting spring and summer for those two guys because it feels like the potential is there. It's just, okay, now you have an opportunity. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, and you talked with Payton Pierce at one of the bowl games, and I think he talked about how he played Will last year, is expecting to move to middle linebacker this year, and there's a real opportunity for him to be that third linebacker, the Arvell Reese, the Cody Simon of years past. And if you're that guy, then you're going to be playing a ton of minutes, and there's going to be a lot required of you. But Cody Simon said he's a supernatural tackler, like not supernatural. He's super dash natural. He's really, really good. And he's a tackling machine. He, 180 some tackles as a junior and senior in Texas high school. So the expectations are very high for him. And he played in a bunch of games last year, mostly special teams over the second half of the season. But people are confident in him, and Cody Simon could say enough good things about him. So I'm expecting this to be a pretty good spring for him. Now, they still need Arvell Reese, obviously, to get his feet under him and become the Mike of the defense. But I'm expecting a lot of Payton Pierce both in spring and this season.
And Garrett Stover, obviously, the other guy who's in that linebacker mix there as a second-year guy. And again, there's the opportunity is there to be in that third, fourth linebacker mix. It does feel like you kind of have a sense for where those top two guys are going to, where the top two guys are going to be. And then, those spots right behind them are open. Guys who are, now a little bit more experience have been with James Laurinaitis for a year, and guys who I think James Laurinaitis is pretty high on. James Laurinaitis also very high on the three true freshmen coming in: Riley Pettyjohn, TJ Alford, Eli Lee. Those are, I talked to James Laurinaitis at the Rose Bowl about those three guys, and it was just, he started talking, and it was like, you sort of expect, oh, you're going to get like 30 seconds of these guys. I was like, oh no, he started talking about these guys. Like, you could tell he is really excited about this incoming freshman class.
You spend that much time on the road for your first true recruiting class. You're going to talk about them time. You're going to gush. These guys, I'll tell you what, the best of all time. But I mean, they can all cover ground. Eli Lee is kind of maybe your prototype middle linebacker, but Riley Pettyjohn, TJ Alford are both athletic, and as we always say, if you can play the will, they'll also ask you to play the mic at times. So those two guys, good luck keeping them off the field. And being out of state guys, you don't want to keep them off the field. You're going to want them to get them to play as much as possible because there are going to be other programs coming after them, as we all know. So those two guys, they are athletic. They are two of the top linebackers in the country. They wanted to play for James Laurinaitis. He wanted them here. So let's see what all the hubbub's about. But yeah, I do expect those two guys to play, and not just special teams. Like they're going to try to get those guys involved, whether it's fourth quarter of games or whatever. They're going to want to see what they can do because again, who is the backup will linebacker at this point? Is it Garrett Stover and one of these true freshmen? Like, or two of like, there's going to be a competition for all of these backup spots. The starters essentially set. But who is Sonny Styles' backup, especially if CJ Hicks is not playing linebacker? If he's on the edge, that job behind Sonny Styles is wide open.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of guys who could earn pretty significant roles this fall that we've been talking about. But the last name I wanted to ask you about, and this is kind of the guy who's a real mystery in terms of what's his role going to be, which position group is he going to be with? Even his Twitter bio leaves a little bit of that up in the air. It is Ty Howard. He's a transfer from Duquesne this season, and that's about the end of where I feel confident in saying, like, this is the stuff that I feel very confident in saying about him. Ty Howard, he's a transfer from Duquesne, and he's related to another player on the Ohio State team this year. Other than that, Tony, I don't know. It's going to be real interesting to see where he ends up slotting in.
Yeah, the older brother of incoming freshman running back Bo Jackson. He calls himself on Twitter a nickel linebacker. He watching some of his clips at Duquesne, kind of played a little bit of on the edge, but also in space, kind of a Sam. So I'm guessing he is a package Sam in a three linebacker kind of set, whatever that is, whether it's probably a 3-3-5 maybe or 4-3, whatever it is. That's kind of the role that he's looking at, because I think he's listed at about 6 foot 200 to give you an idea, and he'll put on some weight, but maybe more of a passing down kind of guy. But yeah, I'm interested to see what he can do in spring, because that'll tell us, maybe not early, but later on, because again, a lot of these transfers will start kind of in the back of the line. So if you see him at the back of the line in spring practice 1, that means really nothing to me. It's by the end of spring, is he still there, or certainly by the middle of fall camp, if he's still there, then you kind of know, because we've seen that with other transfers before where they never really climb. And yes, they want to go ahead and bring in starters out of the portal, but that's also kind of changed now with the need for depth and the way the scholarship situation is nowadays. So I have no idea what to expect, but I think probably a package Sam type of thing.
So we'll be keeping an eye on that, but keeping an eye on all those linebackers. It is a really intriguing position group to watch this spring, because you could see any number of those guys potentially take on a much bigger role this spring. It felt like last spring we spent a lot of the time talking about, like, wow, this team looks like it should be pretty good. And that was kind of the big takeaway of the spring. And you sort of knew most of the position battles were settled. This year, a little more up in the air. So we were watching that. Tony and I actually just did a show on Tuesday on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed, looking at the offensive side of the ball, some of the players with the most to gain and the most potentially to lose this spring. You can find that on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed and on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And we're going to be talking about all of that as well at BuckeyeHuddle.com on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. That's where we talk to all of our members, answer your questions, lots of fun conversations, lots of different stuff to talk about this time of year. Basketball happening as well. Buckeyes Tuesday night have their home finale against Nebraska in a pretty big game. That's a 9:00 tip-off on Peacock. Very convenient time and broadcast location for what is actually a pretty consequential game, because the Buckeyes and Huskers both right on that NCAA tournament bubble. That's going to be a big game Tuesday night. We'll be talking about that as well at the Huddle Board, presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.